Good morning and welcome to the February 2024, day after Valentine's Day, open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, would you please introduce our agenda today?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning to you. Good morning, Commissioners. For today's meeting, you will hear 4 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking intended to simplify the process for alert originators to send multilingual emergency alerts over television and radio. Second, you will consider a reporting order and further notice of proposed rulemaking to strengthen consumers' ability to revoke consent so that it is simple and easy, codify previously adopted protections that make it simpler for consumers to revoke consent, and require that callers and texters implement requests in a timely manner. The item also proposes and seeks comment on how to apply the TCPA to robocalls and robotext from wireless providers to their own subscribers, and proposes to give consumers the ability to revoke consent and thereby stop these communications. Third, you will consider a reporting order to revise the Parts 15 and 74 technical rules to permit a recently developed and more efficient type of wireless microphone system. Fourth, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that would propose a framework for licensing space stations engaged in in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or ISAM, operations that can support sustained economic activity in space. The goal of the proposed framework is to facilitate the development of these novel space activities and advance opportunities for innovation in the new space age. This is your agenda for today. Please note the items listed as 5th, a restricted adjudicatory matter, and 6th, an Enforcement Bureau action in the February 8th, 2024 Sunshine Notice have been adopted by the Commission and deleted from today's agenda. Today's first item is titled Increasing the Accessibility of the Emergency Alert System and will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Deborah Jordan, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Jordan, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairwoman Rosenworcel and Commissioners. During emergencies, it is critical that members of the public can understand the emergency alerts that they receive. According to U.S. Census data, over 26 million people in the U.S. report that they do not speak English very well or at all. That makes multilingual alerting an important public safety need. Last October, the Commission adopted rules to expand the multilingual capabilities of the Wireless Emergency Alert System. Today, we present a notice of proposed rulemaking to likewise promote multilingual alerting through the Emergency Alert System. The Emergency Alert System is used by public safety officials to warn the public over TV and radio about dangerous weather, missing children, and other emergencies. While the system currently allows authorities to issue alerts in languages other than English, the vast majority of these alerts are issued only in English. One of the key challenges faced by authorities is translating time-sensitive alerts into additional languages during crises. The item before you is intended to address this challenge, making it simpler for authorities to send multilingual alerts over the emergency alert system. This in turn can make these alerts accessible to more people during emergencies and potentially save lives. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to present this item is Stephen Carpenter, Electronics Engineer in the Bureau's Cybersecurity and Communications Reliability Division. I'd like to thank the Bureau staff who worked on this item, as well as other bureaus and offices that contributed. Stephen?
Thank you, Chief Jordan. Good morning, Chairwoman Rosenworcel and the Commissioners. The item before you proposes to expand multilingual alerting through the use of pre-scripted or template alert messages. These template-based alerts would be translated into the 13 most commonly spoken non-English languages in the United States: Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Arabic, French, Korean, Russian, Haitian Creole, German, Hindi, Portuguese, and Italian, as well as in English. The scripts and audio files would be produced by the Commission and would be pre-installed and stored in the emergency alert system, or EAS equipment operated by the broadcasters, cable service providers, and other EAS participants that distribute alerts. The NPRM seeks comment on a process through which alert originators could choose to initiate multilingual template-based alerts. Should the alert originator choose to initiate a template-based alert, EAS participants would be required to transmit the alert using the template audio and script in the language that corresponds to the primary language of their programming content. If a provider offers multiple channels with different programming content in different languages, the provider should transmit the template script and audio in the language that corresponds to the primary programming content for each channel. The item seeks comment on the technical feasibility, costs, and efficiency of this template model, as well as on various related considerations, including which EAS messages should be supported through multilingual templates, such as those most commonly used by alerting authorities, as well as those which may be most time-sensitive and thus critical for immediate comprehension, whether the translated scripts and audio could include customized information such as location names, whether EAS participants should be allowed to transmit template alerts only in the language that corresponds to the programming content of their channel or channels, or whether they should be able to include additional languages, whether additional languages could and should be supported through this model, and whether and how American Sign Language could be supported in this model. The Bureau recommends adoption of this notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges for technical and confirming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Well, thanks so much to the chair for bringing this item forward and to the team for all the work. I mean, obviously, the EAS system is an old system, and we continually try to update it and modernize it and make sure that it continues to work. And the most important thing is that when messages have to get out, they get out in a reliable way, and the message itself is delivered from end to end as quickly as possible. So I think we're asking a lot of the right questions here. We need to be mindful as we go forward that we don't go too far in terms of requiring translation within the system itself, which could either be cumbersome or slow things down or introduce technical complexity. But again, I think we asked the right questions around this, including whether a template maybe is a better approach. But again, I'd be a little leery if we go to too much sort of mandating of translation within the system itself. But we're going to get a pretty fulsome record on this, and I think we're looking at it from a range of different perspectives. So I appreciate all the work of the team on this, and it has my support. Thanks.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Picture an emergency, a natural disaster, like a wildfire or a hurricane, a public threat, like a missing child, or an urgent update regarding public services, like a water contamination threat. And of course, imagine if you didn't have that information in that situation, if you couldn't access reliable official reports, had to rely on word of mouth, or were totally in the dark. Panic, confusion, concern. That is, of course, the reality for far too many Americans who don't receive emergency alerts in their language. And so we've tackled this issue for the wireless emergency alert system. Last fall, we required participating commercial mobile service providers to make alerts available in the 13 most commonly spoken non-English languages and in American Sign Language. Today's item naturally follows that important mandate, and it begins the process of requiring the same for participants in our emergency alert system here, radio, TV broadcasters, and MVPDs. This is truly vital work. You know, I spoke a couple weeks ago to the members of our Disability Advisory Committee, and they emphasized how essential that this work is. Time is of the essence in emergencies. Alert recipients must be able to receive, understand, act upon emergency alerts immediately. I thank you to the chairwoman for continuing this good work, hard work, and making accessible emergency alerts. To the Bureau for the hard work. It has my strong support.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this notice proposing a system for making sure that emergency alerts are intelligible and actionable for the overwhelming majority of non-English speakers in this country. So thank you to staff for your hard work on this.
Right to the point. All right, Commissioner Gomez.
When an emergency strikes, we rely on certain trusted entities to alert us and to give us the most updated information to stay safe. Television, cable, and radio shows. But imagine not being able to understand the language in which the emergency information is being transmitted. That is the experience of millions of Americans that speak a language other than English as their primary language. In today's notice of proposed rulemaking, we ask these trusted entities questions about the feasibility of incorporating emergency alerts in 13 of the most commonly spoken non-English languages in the United States. With their help, we seek to achieve the critical goal of ensuring that everyone has timely information to stay safe in a language that they can understand. Thank you to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau for your hard work on this important item.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let's start with what we know. When disaster strikes, emergency alerts can save lives. They provide information we need to stay calm, stay safe, and get the resources we require. But these alerts only work if we understand them. And in the United States, as we've heard, over 26 million people have limited or no ability to speak English. That means we're going to have to get creative and identify new ways to reach everyone in disaster. And that's what led us to extend the reach of the wireless emergency alert system last year when we updated it to ensure it can support 13 languages, including American Sign Language. We did this by requiring participating wireless providers to support templates that were based on a system that New York Attorney General Letitia James brought to our attention following floods caused by Hurricane Ida, where nearly all of those who lost their lives did not speak English. Today, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau will release draft templates and translations to keep this effort moving ahead. Now, we turn to another form of emergency alerts, those on radio and television. Here, too, we want to explore what we can do to make sure essential information is available in multiple languages. So we propose to enhance our emergency alert system using the same kind of template-based approach that we adopted for alerts over wireless phones. Developing multilingual templates would provide alert originators with the ability to send time-sensitive emergency information in more languages, making that information more likely to reach more people. That's why we seek comment on how to do this in a way that corresponds with the language of the programming content. So I look forward to the record that develops. I know if we get creative, we can update radio and television alerts just like we are doing with wireless emergency alerts. And I'm convinced if we do this right, we can help save more lives. And for all of these efforts, I want to thank the staff responsible, including Deborah Jordan, Nicole McGinnis, Austin Randazzo, Erica Olson, Rochelle Cohen, David Munson, Zoe Lee, Joshua Garrett, and Stephen Carpenter from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Emily Talaga, Alex Yankovich, and Cher Lee from the Office of Economics and Analytics. Susie Rosen Singleton, Diane Burstein, and William David Wallace from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Evan Baranoff from the Media Bureau. Ryan McDonald and Victoria Randazzo from the Enforcement Bureau, Shauna Wilkerson and Joy Ragsdale from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Douglas Klein, William Huber, Michelle Ellison, and Anjali Singh from the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we will have a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez.
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 2 on your agenda is titled Empowering Consumers to Stop Robocalls and Robotexts and will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Alejandro Rourke, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Roark, please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, I'm pleased to introduce on behalf of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau an item that, if adopted, would help consumers by making it easier for them to stop robocalls and robotexts that they agreed to receive in the past but no longer want, setting a firm and swift deadline for robocallers and robotexters to honor these opt-out requests. Before turning the presentation over to the Bureau staff, I would like to thank the Enforcement Bureau, the Offices of Communications Business Opportunities, Economics and Analytics, and General Counsel for their valuable assistance. Mika Savir, attorney in CGB's Consumer Policy Division, will present the item.
Thank you, Alejandro. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Consumers have a right to decide which robocalls and robotexts they wish to receive. This includes the right to revoke consent for such calls and texts that they previously agreed to receive and no longer want. The report and order before you, if adopted, would both establish new consent protections and codify certain consumer protections that the Commission previously adopted but did not codify. Specifically, the report and order would make it easier for consumers to revoke consent and require callers and texters to quickly honor revocation requests. The attached further notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on clarifying that the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, the TCPA, applies to robocalls and robotexts for wireless providers to their own subscribers, and whether consumers should have the ability to revoke consent and thereby stop these communications from wireless providers. A consumer's ability to revoke consent to unwanted robocalls and robotexts is one of the most powerful tools the TCPA provides. Previously, the Commission clarified that a consumer may revoke consent in any reasonable manner. The report and order before you would first codify a new rule that will make it clear that consumers may revoke prior express consent for auto-dialed or pre-recorded or artificial voice calls and auto-dialed text in any reasonable manner that clearly expresses a desire not to receive further calls or texts, and that callers may not infringe on that right by designating an exclusive means to revoke consent that precludes the use of other reasonable methods. The report and order finds that using words such as stop, quit, end, revoke, opt out, cancel, or unsubscribe via reply text message constitutes a per se reasonable mean to revoke consent. Additionally, the report and order clarifies and amends the Commission's rules to make clear that consumers who have given their prior express invitation or permission to individual telemarketers to call their telephone numbers that are included in the National Do Not Call Registry maintain the right to revoke consent by any reasonable means. Second, the report and order would amend the Commission's rules to require that callers honor company-specific do not call and revocation of consent requests within a reasonable time, not to exceed 10 business days after receipt of the revocation requests. Consumers are frustrated and confused when they receive robocalls and robotext messages days or weeks following a request to stop such communications. Advances in technology, such as automated and interactive technologies, have made the processing of do not call and consent revocation requests more efficient and provide callers and senders of text messages with the tools they need to process all do not call and consent revocation requests quickly, and certainly within 10 business days. Third, the report and order would codify the Commission's soundbite declaratory ruling, which clarified that a one-time text message confirming a consumer's opt-out request does not violate the TCPA or the Commission's rules, as long as the message merely confirms the called party's opt-out, does not include any marketing or promotional information, and is the only additional message sent to the called party after receipt of the opt-out request. If the confirmation text is sent within 5 minutes of receipt of the consumer's request, it will be presumed to fall within the consumer's prior express consent. Senders may include a request for clarification of the scope of the revocation in this confirmation text, provided the sender ceases all further robocalls and robotexts absent an affirmative response from the consumer. This request for clarification would be limited to instances where the text recipient has consented to several categories of text messages from the text sender. This rule would give consumers an opportunity to specify which types of text messages they wish to opt out of receiving. Where a called party has revoked consent via any reasonable means, the caller would no longer have consent. Thank you. The caller would no longer have consent to make further robocalls or robotexts that called party absent instructions to the contrary from the consumer. Finally, the further notice of proposed rulemaking attached to the report and order would seek comment on clarifying that the TCPA applies to robocalls and robotexts from wireless providers to their own subscribers. In addition, the further notice would seek comment on whether wireless providers satisfy the TCPA's consent obligations via the unique nature of the relationship and service that they provide to their subscribers. To the extent wireless providers have consent to robocall or robotext their own subscribers, the further notice would seek comment on whether wireless subscribers may revoke such consent by communicating a revocation of consent request to their wireless provider. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau recommends adoption of this report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much, and thanks to the team for the work on this. Back in 2015, the FCC adopted what turned out to be a very amorphous standard for revoking consent, at least in my assessment, and ultimately sort of invited, I think, a lot of litigation over revocation of consent that is sort of derails us from being focused on, the core issue with robocalls, which are the scammers, the spoofers, the malicious foreign actors. In this item, we don't revisit that 2015 standard. Instead, we try to offer some clarifications along the way on the revocation of consent. And I want to thank the chair's team and the staff for working with my team to help try to tighten some of the standards around the clarifications that we're making today. Because again, at the end of the day, we don't want to set up a world in which we're keeping the plaintiff's bar very, very busy, but yet not actually shutting down the bad actors that are out there. And I think we now have a draft that strikes a bit of a better balance on that, but it's something that we're going to have to sort of keep an eye on going forward. But again, thanks so much to the team for working with my office on this one, and it has my support.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to the team. Obviously, focusing on the issue of revocation, the thing that constantly came to my mind as I was reading and working through this item is, we continue to empower consumers here and make sure that they're the ones who make the decisions on what they want and what they don't, and giving them the tools that they can to effectuate that. So thank you to the hard work. Has my support.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. Happy to support this item. No comments at this time.
Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you. In today's increasingly digital world, consumers are inundated with information coming through a variety of different communications channels. Some of these communications are helpful, but the majority of it is junk. Junk robocalls and robotexts make it impossible to manage them, and consumers end up ignoring these automated communications entirely, even the helpful ones. Consider the difficulty of navigating these communications and removing yourself from unwanted lists if you speak a language other than English. Today, we update our rules to empower consumers' rights to decide which robocalls and robotexts they receive. We clarify that consumers can opt out of call or text lists using any reasonable means. We clarify as well that consumers may respond in the language in which they received the communication. If you get it in Spanish, you can respond in Spanish. And we make clear that there are no magic words that consumers must use. That is important. These updates strike the right balance between ensuring consumers can easily and efficiently opt out of unwanted junk robocalls and robotexts while remaining connected to those they find useful. I want to thank the Office of the Chairwoman and the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau for working with my office to clarify that consumers can revoke consent by responding in the language they received the communication. And now I will share my remarks in Spanish. Hoy estamos actualizando nuestras reglas para fortalecer el derecho de los consumidores a decidir qué llamadas y textos automatizados están dispuestos a recibir y cuáles no quieren recibir. Estamos facilitando la forma en que los consumidores pueden eliminar sus nombres de las listas de mercadeo no deseado. Estamos aclarando que los consumidores pueden utilizar cualquier medio razonable para optar por no figurar en determinadas listas de llamadas o de mensajería de textos. Clarificamos que los consumidores podrán responder en el idioma de la comunicación que recibieron. Por lo tanto, si usted recibe un mensaje en español, puede responder en español para que eliminen su nombre de la lista y no le vuelvan a enviar mensajes. Asimismo, aclaramos que no hay ninguna palabra mágica que los consumidores necesiten usar. Eso es importante. Estas actualizaciones logran el equilibrio adecuado para garantizar que los consumidores tengan la capacidad de optar de manera fácil y efectiva para no recibir llamadas automáticas y mensajes de texto no deseados. y que a la vez permanezcan conectados para recibir las comunicaciones que consideran útiles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. You know, every week here, we are looking for new ways to quash junk robocalls and robotexts. And of course, there's a good reason for this. They're awful, they're annoying, and they are eroding trust in our communications networks. Because the bad actors behind them won't stop, neither will we. And that's why today we update our rules under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act to make clear consumers have the right to choose what calls and texts they receive. We do this because no consumer should be forced to jump through hoops or say special magic words to stop this junk from reaching them. And those who send this nonsense need to honor your request. Last week, we also took action to stop the newest form of unwanted communications, robocalls using artificial intelligence voice cloning technology. We made clear that restrictions on the use of artificial or pre-recorded voice under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act apply to calls that use AI to simulate a human voice. That means when these calls show up, folks like state attorneys general can go after those responsible and hold them accountable. In fact, 26 state attorneys general are already on record supporting this approach. And one of them, the State Attorney General of New Hampshire, worked with us over the last few weeks to take action to address fake voice cloned calls that were designed to confuse residents about where and when to vote during the primary in the state. He went after the entity responsible for these calls, and we went after the provider carrying the suspected illegal robocall traffic. Now, in the not-too-distant future, we could all be on the receiving end of these fake calls, and the law we have to address this situation is not new, so kudos to Congressman Pallone for introducing the Do Not Disturb Act to update it. But I want to make clear, when we see problems, we will act often and act fast because we need to get this junk off the line. And with that, I want to thank the robocall response team and the staff responsible for this effort, including Aaron Garza, Wes Platt, Mika Savier, Richard Smith, Mark Stone, and Christy Thornton from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Jessica Manuel and Daniel Stepanisic from the Enforcement Bureau, Richard Mallon and Melina Barzilai from the Office of General Counsel, Mark Montano from the Office of Economics and Analytics, and Jocelyn James from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And with that, we'll have a vote on the item, starting with Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, can you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda is titled Expanding Opportunities for Wireless Microphone Use and will be presented by the Office of Engineering and Technology. Ron Rapazzi, Chief of the Office, will give the introduction.
Madam Secretary, Mr. Rapazzi, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. We are pleased to present for your consideration a report and order that revises the Commission's technical rules to permit the use of a recently developed, more spectrally efficient type of wireless microphone system called Wireless Multi-Channel Audio System, or WMAS. Wireless microphones are used in a variety of settings, including educational institutions, theaters, music venues, film studios, conventions, corporate events, and houses of worship. The report and order modifies the Part 15 and Part 74 rules to permit wireless microphone users to operate WMAS in many of the frequency bands where wireless microphones are currently permitted. Hugh Ventile, Senior Engineer in our Policy and Rules Division, will present the item. Hugh?
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The item before you is a report and order that modifies the Part 15 and Part 74 rules to allow a new, more efficient type of wireless microphone called a Wireless Multi-Channel Audio System, or WMAS. WMAS is an emerging technology that enables wireless microphones to use spectrum more efficiently. Most currently available wireless microphones transmit on a single audio channel within a narrow radio frequency channel. WMAS transmits multiple audio channels within a wider radio frequency channel, which allows a greater number of microphones to operate per megahertz of spectrum. The report and order allows WMAS to operate on a licensed basis under the Part 74 rules in many of the bands currently used by wireless microphones, including the TV bands, the 600 megahertz duplex gap, the 900 megahertz and 1.4 gigahertz bands, and portions of the 6.875 to 7.125 gigahertz band. It also allows WMAS to operate on an unlicensed basis in the TV bands and 600 megahertz duplex gap. WMAS will be permitted to use a channel size of up to 6 megahertz in the TV bands and up to 20 megahertz outside the TV bands, but smaller channels may be used when less spectrum is needed or available. To ensure that spectrum is used efficiently, WMAS must be capable of operating with at least 3 audio channels per megahertz of spectrum. These changes do not alter the existing spectrum rights or expectations regarding spectrum access and availability for any authorized spectrum users, including broadcast licensees, white space device users, and other wireless microphone users. WMAS is permitted in Europe under the applicable European Telecommunications Standards Institute, or ETSI, standards. The report and order requires WMAS to comply with the emission mask and spurious emission limits established for WMAS in the 2021 ETSI standard for wireless microphones. It also updates the Part 15 and Part 74 rules to require newly certified non-WMAS wireless microphones to comply with the emission mask and spurious emission limits in the 2021 ETSI standard, rather than the 2011 version currently specified in the rules. Requiring that all new wireless microphones adhere to the latest standards will harmonize our rules with those already in effect in other areas of the world, ensuring economies of scale for consumers to enable ready access to the new technology. The staff recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges solely for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear comments from the bench, starting with Commissioner Carr.
Thanks. You know, with our Spectrum Auction Authority lapsed, Spectrum wins are sort of few and far between these days, but here's one. We do get a Spectrum win today, and I want to thank the chair and the team for the work on this one. At the end of the day, we're allowing more intensive and efficient use of this spectrum. We're allowing new technologies to be introduced. I really appreciate all the work that you all have put into this one. It has my support. Thank you.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you to the team for the hard work here. Appreciate it. I think someone from my team reported to me that we saw this in use at the Dubai USG event, and so I saw it in real life play out. All was well. The concert even that the band put on utilized it. So glad to see that we're going to be able to activate it here. Thank you.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm happy to support today's item, and I'd like to thank the OET staff for the hard work on this important proceeding.
Commissioner Gomez.
Technological progress has brought us many exciting new devices that have become integral to our lives. Garage door openers, baby monitors, smart homes, pet trackers, and let's not forget Wi-Fi. Today, progress brings us a new type of wireless microphone system that can operate more mics per megahertz. You might feel a little skeptical about my excitement around this new mic system. But first, I would like to congratulate Commissioner Starks for his big win last Sunday. Did you know that approximately 5,000 wireless mics were used at the Super Bowl alone? 5,000. So not just impressive in Dubai, but also here at home. In fact, the Thursday before the big game, all of the wireless devices to be used during the show were powered up and tested, I'm sure with OET's approval, to ensure everything worked smoothly. They call that day the RF Wars. That's only a geek's dream. Technological progress that allows more efficient use of spectrum is a great thing in my book. I'm pleased to learn that this new system will help the entertainment industry continue to facilitate large-scale productions for our delight, whether it's the Super Bowl, a Broadway show, or maybe even the Women's World Cup in 2027, if FIFA accepts our bid to host. Thank you to the Office of Engineering and Technology for your work in this item and for being at the forefront of technological development on behalf of our nation.
So unless you are in video and audio production, or maybe Commissioner Gomez, the odds are you haven't thought much about wireless microphones, but they're everywhere. We can start with last weekend's Super Bowl, and yes, that's for you, Commissioner Starks. The commentary on and off the field required wireless microphones along with that halftime show. You will find them in big Broadway productions and small-town theaters. They are everywhere on film sets, and they're commonly used in houses of worship, stadiums, and schools. These ubiquitous devices operate in a mix of licensed and unlicensed airwaves like the 600 megahertz and 900 megahertz bands, as well as the 1.4 gigahertz and 7 gigahertz bands. And those are airwaves that are shared with a wide range of other wireless services, including broadcasting, aeronautical activities, Wi-Fi, and other unlicensed technologies. Now, making sure that all of these services can function at the same time without interference is a tall task. So when a new technology comes along with the potential to improve the efficiency of wireless microphone operations, we're going to take a second look. That's why a few years ago we issued a rulemaking to explore this new type of wireless technology known as wireless multi-channel audio systems, or WMAS. And it's why today we are adopting new rules to fully support these systems. We do this because they can significantly improve the efficiency of wireless microphone operations. In fact, under the rules we adopt here, 3 times as many microphones can operate while putting the same amount of power out over the air as a single microphone can today under our existing rules. That's a spectrum win-win, because it means we can do more with our airwaves for all kinds of technologies, benefiting everything from special Super Bowl-sized spectacles to the Wi-Fi routers we use in our homes every day. And with that, I want to thank the team behind this effort, including Ron Rapazzi, Ira Keltz, Dana Schaefer, Jameson Prime, Krista Wittnowski, Michael Ha, Nicholas Oros, Baman Badapur, Hu Van Tile, Syed Hassan, Siobhan Philemon, David Duarte, and they're from the Office of Engineering and Technology. I also want to thank Kevin Harding, Mark Colombo, and James Bradshaw from the Media Bureau, Chris Andes, Stephen Buzzino, Joyce Jones, Paul Malamud, and Joshua Smith from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Anjali Singh, Doug Klein, and Keith McCrickard from the Office of General Counsel, Alex Yankovic and Paul LaFontaine from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Ryan McDonald, Matthew Gibson, Shannon Lipp, Michael Rhodes, Paul Nunn, Daniela Aragui, and Neil McNeil from the Enforcement Bureau, Joy Ragsdale, and Michael Gusso from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, and Marlene Deutsch and Katira Jackson from the Office of the Secretary. And with that, we'll have a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. And Madam Secretary, can you announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, the 4th and final item on your agenda is titled Space Innovation, Facilitating Capabilities for In-Space Servicing, Assembly, and Manufacturing, and will be presented by the Space Bureau, and Julie Kearney, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Kearney, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. We're pleased to introduce a Space Bureau item that furthers the Commission's space innovation agenda and continues its efforts to promote United States leadership in space. If adopted, this notice of proposed rulemaking will advance opportunities and innovation in a new category of space activities known as In-Service Assembly and Manufacturing, or ISAM. These novel space activities will require effective and efficient use of radio frequency communications. The item before you proposes a framework to foster and support a robust environment for ISAM activities. Joining me at the table from the Space Bureau are Patrick Weber, Deputy Chief, Stephen Dool, Associate Chief, Melissa Velez, Chief of the Satellite Programs and Policy Division, and Jamie Ann Fuller, Attorney Advisor in the Satellite Programs and Policy Division. Also joining us at the table is Neutron Star, Jamie Ann's seeing eye dog, who also doubly serves as a support animal for all of us in the Space Bureau. Before I turn it over to Jamie Ann, I also would like to offer the Bureau's thanks to our colleagues in the Office of the General Counsel and the Office of Communications Business Opportunities for their assistance with the item. Jamie Ann will now present the item.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Before you is a draft notice of proposed rulemaking that proposes a framework for licensing the activities of space stations conducting in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or ISAM. ISAM refers to a broad range of novel capabilities that occur on orbit, on the surface of celestial bodies, or in transit between these regimes. These operations can include inspecting, repairing, or refueling in-orbit spacecraft, capturing and removing debris, and transforming materials through manufacturing while in space. ISAM has the potential to launch new scientific and economic opportunities along with new tools for the sustainable use of outer space. The NPRM proposes a definition of ISAM space station in section 25.103 of our rules, drawn from the definition of ISAM in the ISAM National Strategy, and proposes a new rule section in Part 25, Section 25.126, to establish a basic framework for licensing ISAM space stations. These proposed new rules, specific to ISAM space stations, would make the application process more effective, efficient, and transparent for this new yet burgeoning industry. The NPRM proposes that applications that fit within the proposed definition of ISAM space station could elect to apply through the existing Part 25 licensing procedures or through the existing streamlined processes for small satellites and small spacecraft. The NPRM also proposes that operators of ISAM space stations could apply for grants of U.S. market access. The proposed framework would include an exemption for ISAM space stations from the Commission's processing round rules for non-geostationary orbit space stations and from the first-come, first-served process for geostationary orbit space stations, so long as the ISAM applicant submits a certification and narrative description confirming communications will be compatible with existing operations in the requested frequency bands and not materially constrain future use of the spectrum. The NPRM proposes that the Commission would review ISAM operators' requests for frequency use on a case-by-case basis, consistent with our process for small satellites and small spacecraft. The NPRM also proposes to require operators of ISAM space stations to comply with the Commission's existing orbital debris mitigation rules and proposes to review orbital debris mitigation plans for ISAM space stations on a case-by-case basis. Finally, the NPRM proposes a one-year grace period for ISAM space station licensees or market access grantees to meet the Commission's milestone requirement or else file a surety bond, consistent with the rules for small satellites and small spacecraft. The Space Bureau recommends adoption of this notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you to Jamie Ann and the Space Bureau. We'll now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, thanks so much to the team for the work on this, and thanks to the chair as well for the work on it and for working with my team on some clarifying edits along the way. I think obviously this is an important issue area and one where we have to make sure that we continue to proceed with respect to our important but yet limited jurisdiction over these issues. As I've said in other contexts before, orbital debris and otherwise, I think we need to be cognizant of our role principally as a regulator of RF emissions and not go too far into substantive regulations that might be better suited for other space-based agencies that have other expertise and equities involved in these proceedings. And so I think we get the right balance here in this NPRM, and I look forward to the record as it develops. So thanks again to the team.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. There really is no question that ISAM is an emerging frontier of commercial space. The potential applications here that we see and hear and read about operators using microgravity for molecular manufacturing. Others want to use, of course, for orbital debris. But the real point is that this is innovative. This is where the future of space is going. And of course, as always in this space, our regulations and our framework needs to keep pace with what is a truly dynamic sector. So I'm glad to support this. Thank you to the hard work, Chief. Thank you, Jamie Ann, for your presentation, for your hard work on this, and thank you all. Has my support.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm pleased to approve today's notice. I look forward to a robust record, and I'd like to express many thanks to the Space Bureau staff for their work on this important item.
Commissioner Gomez.
As you may have heard, a new space age is here, and the new space economy is rapidly growing. Technological advancements have shifted the space paradigm, reducing challenges that once defined the industry and limited new capabilities. The FCC has been responding accordingly to support the growth and innovation in the space industry. Today's In-Space Servicing, Assembly, and Manufacturing, or ISAM NPRM, is a great example. Do not let the name ISAM fool you. This is groundbreaking. We rely on space-based technologies every day, for GPS to weather forecasting and emergency communications. Up until now, these systems had to be designed to launch with everything they needed for their entire mission. As you can imagine, it's costly and challenging to operate, not to mention puts lots of pressure on getting it perfect on launch. This has constrained operators and capabilities of space operations. But what are the possibilities of space innovation without these constraints? That's where In-Space Servicing, Assembly, and Manufacturing comes in. ISAM capabilities enable satellites to be repaired and refueled in orbit, extending their operational lifelines. Larger, more complex space systems can be deployed using assembly capabilities. These innovations have the potential to fundamentally change the way we approach space exploration, making it more cost-effective, sustainable, and operationally efficient than ever before. So this NPRM charts the path to support these activities and to promote U.S. leadership in the space economy. It is difficult to establish a framework for an industry that is still nascent, but I'm grateful that the FCC is always up to the challenge and strikes the right balance between proposing regulatory certainty while leaving room for innovation and development. So thank you to the Bureau for all your important work on this item.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to start by talking about 2007 because in technology, 2007 was a really big year. In fact, Thomas Friedman wrote a book about it called Thank You for Being Late, which drew attention to how the launch of the iPhone, the globalization of social media platforms, and the creation of Watson, an early artificial intelligence system, all took place during 2007. But something else also happened during that year that I think deserves attention. There was a game-changing launch at Cape Canaveral called Orbital Express. It was an experiment by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that pioneered a new type of space mission featuring 2 satellites that would rendezvous in our skies to transfer propellant and hardware. The idea was simple. If we can service satellites in orbit, we can extend the lifespan of their missions, enhance their capabilities, and reduce their costs. So fast forward to now. A new space age is here, and the ideas behind Orbital Express have taken hold in our skies within space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or ISAM. Today, ISAM is a growing part of the space economy. It includes a range of in-space activities from repairing and refueling satellites to assembling whole new systems in space. It can even include systems for the manufacturing of new parts, products, or infrastructure in orbit. Plus, it can help with space sustainability through the development of technologies to capture and remove orbital debris and assist with reuse and recycling of in-orbit systems. On top of that, it has the potential to support new services like space tugs and new products that leverage microgravity to achieve results impossible back here on Earth. I really think our grandest ambitions for space are going to depend on us developing these ISAM capabilities. Because if we want to expand connectivity on Earth, address global climate change, protect our national security, and support human life on the moon and beyond, we're going to benefit immeasurably from ISAM systems. And that's why today we are proposing a new framework to license ISAM space stations and ensure they have access to the communications necessary for their effective use. We've developed what I think are common sense, flexible rules that provide ISAM operators a clear pathway forward for their applications for novel use cases so they can develop new services in our skies. Now, while Orbital Express left orbit over a decade ago, it was a really incredible experiment. In fact, this rulemaking might not have been possible without it. It's also incredible to take a look back at Thomas Friedman's book about 2007, because if you comb through the index, space gets a single mention, only one. But the good news is at this agency, we see clearly the vast possibilities of the space economy and are taking steps now to support it. So thank you to the many folks on our staff who worked on this effort in our space innovation docket. And from the Space Bureau, that's Victor Allison, Christina Alamonte, Bill Belt, Maria Cava, Steve Duall, Jamie Ann Fuller, Jennifer Gilsonon, Julie Kearney, Whitney Lohmeyer, Carl Kensinger, Scott McCool, Julia Millette, Carrie Murray, Brandon Paget, Janine Poltroneri, Troy Tanner, Patrick Weber, and Marissa Velez. From the Enforcement Bureau, that's Jeremy Marcus, Ryan McDonald, and Victoria Randazzo. From the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Jocelyn James, Joy Ragsdale, and Shauna Wilkerson. From the Office of Economics and Analytics, Alex Yankovic. From the Office of Engineering and Technology, Jamie Coleman, Michael Ha, Ira Keltz, Nick Oros, Jameson Prime, and Sari Tai. From the Office of General Counsel, Susan Aaron, Deborah Broderson, Dave Konskal, Andrea Kelly, Anjali Singh, and Jeff Steinberg. And from the Office of International Affairs, Neshe Gundelsberger, Dante Ibarro, and Michelle Wu Bailey. And with that, we will have a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. All right, we've come to that time. Would any of my colleagues like to make announcements right now? Commissioner Carr? No. Commissioner Starks?
Yes, I will. As was nibbled at here, I'm going to highlight the tremendous Super Bowl win
We should have seen that coming.
by the Kansas City Chiefs this past Sunday, making the Chiefs a rare back-to-back winner. A very rare feat. I think only 4 teams have done it. I also want to point out that the game was equally rare in that it went into overtime. Only the second time that's happened, garnered a smashing 202 million viewers by CBS Paramount Plus across all platforms, again breaking a record. And of course, I'm going to point out that I'm wearing my red tie to celebrate the Chiefs. But on a serious moment, I'm also equally compelled to talk about the mass shooting that happened in Kansas City, just outside of Union Station. I've been there. I grew up in Kansas City, was born there. And so what was a day of celebration became a day of mourning. What was triumph turned to tragedy. And so I also wear a red tie today out of solidarity for those that are in Kansas City. I've heard from a number of folks who were there. And the mass shooting at the parade was a senseless act of violence. It was tragic, and it was heinous. At least 1 dead, 21 others injured, 9 children. 9 children, all with gunshot wounds. People truly who went there to celebrate the Super Bowl who won't return home, or some who will be much changed when they do. And so my heart is broken in some ways. I've been in touch with the Kansas City Mayor, Quentin Lucas, who is a good friend, offered support, assistance. He said, and I share, that this is an absolute tragedy, the likes of which we would never have expected in Kansas City, the likes of which we will remember for some time. And so I am praying for the families who were impacted, for all, and I'm praying for Kansas City. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Starks. Well said. We do not have to live this way. Commissioner Symington, anything to share?
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Commissioner Gomez, nothing. All right. Thank you, commissioners. No announcements from the chair. That's a new one in recent memory. So, Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next date for the Commission's monthly agenda meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, March 14th, 2024.
Until then, We stand adjourned.
Good morning, everyone. If we could please take any outside conversations to the foyer, that would be greatly appreciated. If you could take any outside conversations or please find a seat, we will be starting with the chairwoman's post-open meeting press conference in a few minutes. Please find a seat or take any of those conversations outside. We'd greatly appreciate it. All right, so with that, without further ado, for those who have not had the chance to meet me, my name is Paloma Perez Christie. I am the Director of Office of Media Relations at the FCC, and I have the privilege of welcoming the Chairwoman, Jessica Rosa Worsel, to the podium. She'll be taking a few questions, and with that, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Paloma. All right, good morning. Let's go ahead.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. Matt Dademan, Communications Daily. Can you discuss, Commissioner Carr earlier this week had called for an investigation of Apple for Part 14 violations for alleged disabling of the Beeper Mini. Can you discuss what the agency, if anything, is doing? Have you had discussions with the Commissioner? Where are we since he came out publicly with that? Thank you.
First things first, we are looking to see if we have complaints from those in the disabilities community about the issue.
Hi, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask about these challenges to the Universal Service Fund, a couple now at the Supreme Court. Just wondering, since they're citing the rising contribution factor, if you could kind of address, in your view, what needs to be done to reform the revenue base, and if it only can be done with congressional action, or if the FCC can do anything on its own to start to reduce that.
The Universal Service Contribution System was developed in 1996 when dial-up internet was a thing and an AOL address was styling. It was a long time ago. It's fair to say right now that we are trying to modernize this system for the demands on communications today. But for the long term, that's going to be a discussion we'll need to have with Congress. And we'll have to find ways to modernize it so it meets this moment. We are working to defend our system before the courts where there has been litigation on this subject, and we're going to continue to do so. All right.
Thanks so much, Chairwoman. And with that, I welcome my colleague, Will Wyquist, to the podium, who will be leading our bureau-level press conference. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paloma. So we'll go through the meeting items for any questions on the items themselves. Do you have any questions on the multilingual EAS item? Okay. Public Safety Bureau here. Deb? You guys come up? There was a question, yeah.
Thank you very much. Were there any notable changes from the draft item? Were there any incorporation of questions that were raised by NCTA?
We did add a question that was raised by NCTA. We added a question into the item, so you'll see it in the item that was a result of NCTA's filing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chris, anything? Great.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the robocalls and robotext item from CGB. All right, is CGB here?
Hi, good afternoon.
Similar question, any changes on the item, any notable changes on the item from the draft version, please?
You know, I think we always get this question, and my experience here at the FCC is that it's a very collaborative type of an organization. So there's always kind of edits, there's always input that comes in. But I think that we worked really hard, as you heard from the commissioners, with all of the offices to ensure that we struck the right balance in that item.
Anything else? Chris, anything? Thank you. So next up is the wireless microphones issue. Any questions? Okay. I'm gonna take a wild guess what the question is, Matt.
Hi there.
Again, no surprises, but any notable changes in the outcome of the item from the draft version?
But no substantive changes. There's some textual changes in the section dealing with power levels that reflects a ex parte meeting that we had with one of the parties to the proceeding, but there's no change to the power levels that went out in the public release of the item.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Was that the broadcasters? You mentioned
Yes.
ex parte?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
So there are changes based on that meeting?
There are changes to the text to reflect what was discussed in the record. There are no changes to the bottom line on the power levels that are permitted.
Anything else? Great.
All right.
Thank you. Sure. Safe to assume same question for the Space Bureau? All right, thanks.
Julie, hi.
Hi.
Again, any changes into the tentative conclusions, the questions asked? Also, SpaceX had raised some issues about FCC authority. Any changes reflecting that at all?
We do seek comment in our NPRM about our interagency collaboration. Steve, did you have anything you want to?
Yeah, there were no substantive
No,
changes.
nothing
And
substantive.
no substitute change.
Right.
Cool.
It's a great item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think Commissioner Carr is here, so welcome him to the stage. Thank you all very much.
Thanks. Good to see all of you here again. I think as was indicated, I gave remarks earlier this week at a conference where I called for the FCC to start an investigation into Apple for its compliance with our Part 14 rules. As I walk through generally in those remarks, I think we are charged here at the FCC with promoting competition within the sector that we regulate, including mobile wireless and telecom generally. And as I laid out in that speech, I think we're doing a good job, at least historically, of promoting competition there. But increasingly, all that competition that we're seeing is filtering down through a single choke point, and it's Apple. And I think there's broader competition concerns, and at least according to the reporting, it's being looked at potentially by the Department of Justice. I would encourage them to look at those issues. And the FCC, I think, has a role to play as well. And one specific role that I think we have to play is to take a look at our Part 14 rules. And so that's what I called on the agency to do, and we'll see how that pans out. But with that as my opening, happy to take any questions you all may have.
Commissioner, thank you for making the time. A two-parter. First, on the Part 14 issue, have you heard any feedback from the chair's office about that? Have you heard any feedback from Apple? And unrelated, but on the ISAM NPRM, you discussed in your statements, in your comments about sort of the agency threading the needle of balance between its authority and also doing something on this issue. Do you foresee, with your crystal ball hat on, your Karnak hat on, that going forward, an actual order could be a little more problematic than an NPRM?
Yeah, thanks. So no comment on sort of internal discussions on the Apple thing. I've not heard from Apple one way or the other on it. I'm sure Apple has a view and an explanation for their part as to why they think their conduct is reasonable. And I'm happy to hear their perspective on that, but I have not heard from Apple yet. With respect to ISAM, I think the point I'm trying to make is a broader one, which is if you look sort of historically at my approach to space issues, I have tried to flag areas where I think the FCC may be going beyond our core expertise. So going back to when Chairman Pai was chairman of the agency, I expressed some disagreement there, at least around the edges, with some of the FCC's approach with respect to orbital debris, where I thought, yes, we have a licensing hook on RF and spectrum, but that doesn't necessarily make that the right hook to impose regulations that are sort of very far afield from our RF expertise, including with orbital debris. And here with this ISAM proceeding, I'm very open-minded. Haven't made a final decision one way or the other, but just want to make sure that as we go forward, we try to hew as closely as possible to our core expertise on spectrum, and not get into regulating other issues or necessarily using the licensing hook as an opportunity for importing, again, other sort of non-licensing, non-RF sort of substantive regulations. The potential is there for the FCC to do that, so we'll see how the proceeding goes forward. But I think we're asking the right questions, and I'm open-minded as to how the proceeding will wrap up. Yeah.
Hey, Commissioner. I was wondering if you could kind of describe how the working relationships are right now among commissioners. I think it was the broadcast license issue last month. There was a rule, you kind of mentioned a hiccup in how they dealt with the main studio rule repeal and that issue and bringing that up. So could you kind of tell us how things are going?
Yeah, look, I think we continue to get along very well as the rule at the agency. If you notice some of the items today that we did, not necessarily the most high-profile items from a news headline perspective, but some interesting ones. The robocall one and was an item where the chair's team worked really well and closely with my office to make sure we make some tweaks around the edges that I think at the end of the day align with both of our offices' intents for that item, similar with the ISAM item. So I've been really happy so far with the continued good working relationship that we've had, some good give and takes on edits, some compromise, and I think that's a good, healthy discourse, and it's the way I think we should be operating. So I think it continues to go well in terms of relationships across the offices. That hiccup that you noticed, but again, since then, things have been working well in terms of their responsiveness to our requests and our edits. All right, thanks all, appreciate it.